So can we start off and define inherited trauma?
Absolutely. So let's say that one of our parents or our grandparents had a significant trauma. Something terrible happens. They lose their mom or their dad when they're little, or our mother or father they're raised by a grandmother instead of their mom, or they're raised by relatives or placed in an orphanage. Maybe when they're young, one of the siblings got hit by a car or died tragically in some way, or they're born during a war, which would be another significant trauma. An event like this can devastate the family. It can rigidify the family. Now, what we know is the reaction to the trauma doesn't stop with the people who experienced it. So the feelings and the sensations, specifically the stress response, the way the genes express, this can pass forward to the children and the grandchildren, affecting them in a similar way, even though they didn't personally experience the trauma.
That's incredible. Is there a difference between intergenerational trauma and inherited trauma?
No.
Okay,
No.
so just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, generational, intergenerational, inherited. Yeah.
So when we talk about genetics and epigenetics, what do they determine? Eye color, hair color, or do they have any impression on our emotions and our behaviors?
Oh, absolutely. There's a part of the DNA they used to call junk DNA that is really 98% that really has a function of affecting much more than eye color or hair. That's 2% of our DNA. I think I'll talk about how this happens. So we talked about that significant trauma. And then after this trauma happens, it physically changes us, molecularly changes us, chemically changes us. Literally, it causes a chemical change in our DNA. And this can change how our genes function, sometimes for generations. So there'll be this trauma. And then after this event, a chemical tag will attach to our DNA and tell the cells to use or ignore certain genes, enabling us to better deal with what just happened. And then the way our genes are affected, this will change how we act or how we feel. For example, we can become sensitive or reactive to situations that are similar to the original trauma, even if that trauma occurred in a past generation to our parents and our grandparents, so that we have a better chance of surviving it in this generation. I'll give you an example. We've got a war going on right now, so I'm going to give you, in Ukraine, I'm going to give you an example of what would happen during such a trauma. If our grandparents came from a war-torn country, so there's shots going off, bombs going off, people maybe being lined up in the square, people being taken away, the people who experienced that trauma, let's say our grandparents, they would develop and pass forward a particular skill set to help them survive that trauma. So let's say that skill set, maybe there's good things, sharper reflexes, quicker reaction times, reactions to the violence, but it would also contain maybe negative things like fight, flight, freeze reactions, the body freezing, shutting down, sinking into a depression. This is the skill set that gets passed forward now to help us survive the trauma that they experience. The problem is we can inherit a stress response with the dials set to 10, and here we are prepared to deal with this war, this catastrophe that never arrives because we're born generations later. The problem is, Jessica, we rarely make the link that our anxiety, our hypervigilance, our depression is connected to our parents and our grandparents. We just think we're wired this way.